Back to school talk is a Spark tradition because we find that there's a lot going on the first couple weeks of term, especially for new graduate students. It can be useful to have some perspectives on how to kind of stack on. Well, that's what this is going to be. And I'm going to get a sense from you of where in all of the material that I have to possibly share you're most interested in exploring. Okay, so let me share my PowerPoint. Okay, so as I said, this is generally targeted to new graduate students. We want to make sure that you have the tools, you know what tools are available and how to use them, and also some perspective from one person about some habits that might support success across the many domains of your life. I got an advanced question really about how to balance intensive outside life with doing well. And so some of the content directly looks at that. All of this is sort of the best information that I have as of today. Different departments and programs are going to use different tools and resources. So definitely let that be a major guide. Also, what I suggest may or may not work for you. No warranty or guarantee. These are just suggestions and ideas. Okay. So there are 4 things that we can potentially talk about. How grad school is different from undergrad, different kinds of like software platforms and other platforms that are used at McMaster, other resources and tools for your graduate school experience, and then some thoughts and tools on balancing your life. So the breakdown of the slides is roughly half these first 3 and half this last one. We may well run into time constraints. So I'd really like to hear from you. Are you more interested in tools and resources at the university? Are you more interested in thoughts on how to balance busy schedules? We'll try to get to both, but I want to be sure that we're concentrating time where it's most useful to you. Thoughts? Balancing schedules. Great. Anyone else?
I'm interested in writing research related to academic support.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit about that. That may also be something that you'll want to schedule time to talk in more detail about.
Sure, I would love to.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got 1 for tools and resources, 1 for balancing schedules. Lisa, do you have a take? We'll do our best with all of it. Okay. So fundamentally, a lot of the difference between graduate school and undergrad, if you think about it in terms of experience, the starting place is that undergraduate education is about how you learn and think. And graduate education is really about being able to identify the areas where you are trying to build knowledge and learn independently within those and build some learning for life kind of skills. And then being able to, if you're moving on to a doctorate, generate knowledge. A lot of the experience of this is that you'll see more focus on theory and methods or tools. You're really responsible for figuring out when and how to apply all of the different tools that you're introduced to. Just as a reference point, I don't actually know the total number of social science research methods, but it's probably in the thousands. And so responsibility for figuring out what it is you're interested in, what are the ways that people approach looking at it, and what skills and abilities you want to build, that is a fundamental part of what you're going to be doing over this year. You generally have to study before class rather than before exams because class becomes more important. There are discussion posts, often reading class discussions, presenting readings to the class. Quantitatively, the number 1 difference between graduate school and undergraduate school is generally there's more of everything, including often a lot more reading. More of your education tends to happen outside of the classroom, in groups, in discussions with peers, in more informal discussions with faculty and staff, in your own research, in work that you do, apprenticeships or RA-ships that you do. There's more focus on ensuring the transferability of your skills, and often there's more individual attention. The theme is more. Some of the key platforms, Mosaic, which you've probably already been exposed to, a lot of what you're going to do in terms of administrative aspects of your time at McMaster happens in this platform. Important things to know, it's slow, it's kind of confusing. Certain tasks require that you be part of the virtual private network, VPN, at McMaster, and I'll show you how to do that. Avenue to learn. Again, you may already have had exposure to this either here or elsewhere. Each instructor sets up their site differently. Not everyone will use Avenue to Learn for information about their course, but a lot of instructors do. Announcements, distributed course outlines, discussion boards, assignments, and hosting. The most important thing that I think is important for you to know about Avenue is to go into the settings, choose email settings, and have it send a copy of messages to, and then you put in your email address. Have things replied to, put in your email address. If everything forwards from the email that lives in Avenue to Learn to your default email, it will save you a lot of missing important announcements. Okay, a newer platform that more instructors and particularly research teams are using is Teams. The nice thing is that it integrates video conferencing, file management, and Slack-like features. There'll likely be a lot of variation in organization because it was not originally designed for classes. One kind of quick tip, and I will say these slides are going to be available, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. At some point, you will probably end up with a ton of teams. The default of how they are set up is as tiles in the order that they were added to your account, which is generally not a useful order. I have 47 active teams, and this drove me absolutely insane until I figured out the following trick. So, at the top of your picture, an icon, choose settings, then change the layout to list, and then you can move them into whatever order you want. If you own particular teams, you can change the name, you can change the team picture so that you can navigate amongst all your teams. Hopefully you will not end up in a place where you have 47 teams, but it can happen. I know a couple of students that have ended up in this situation, and being able to turn it into a list has made a world of difference. It literally changed all of how I felt about teams. Video conferencing, I'm not going to get too into that. You probably know the range of what's available in terms of you can just start call in Teams. You can schedule one. There are lots of different kinds of options within Teams. Other tech resources. Resources for technology are all contained on a list here. The virtual private network, it's relatively simple to set up for it. As I said, some Mosaic features require it as sort of an extra level of security. If you are in a foreign locale, even if you are off campus, every once in a while, something won't work and you won't know why it won't work, why you can't access it. Odds are decent that you need to jump onto the virtual private network. So you just download it here, set it up, and then whenever you are ready to connect, you just click on ready to connect and it connects in. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions or comments. Other tech resources, EduRealm. If you are going to be traveling to other universities, EduRealm is a wonderful thing. It's a common Wi-Fi network across universities, certainly in the US and Canada. I think there's some in Europe as well. You don't have to worry about getting local access to the Wi-Fi at other universities. That can often be a hassle. Software. So all students have access to the entire Microsoft 365 suite, which has a lot of really useful features. We also recommend that if you don't already have an antivirus, you be sure you install an antivirus. So relatively cheap at the campus store. For specialized software, it's sort of all over the campus, and you have to kind of know the places to go. So that's what this slide is. UTS has at this link what they have in their computer labs. So they have a computer lab in the basement that people can use and that can be used for classes. The library has research computers that have some software on them. Within the library, on the, I believe it's 4th or the 5th floor, the Lions New Media Center has specialized hardware and software that is focused on creative pursuits. So they've got like the Adobe Creative Suite on there. In LR Wilson 5803, we have a laptop that has some of the basic software that is commonly used within social sciences. So NVivo, Stata, R, and Python that you can use within that space. And you can use everything advanced. Okay, other resources and tools. The library is great. There's a very nice graduate student study room that's like the CoLab at Spark, which I'm going to talk about, is locked, and you can get one access key that will allow you to access both of those spaces. So just go to either one, get the access key, and then go to the other and have them add their information to that same access key. They have a very good little chat with the librarian feature on the website for quick questions. You can set up appointments with research librarians. If you're doing your first graduate level literature review, I think it saves a lot of time and effort to do a quick 30-minute conversation with a librarian, because they'll help you build a lot of skills to make that as efficient a process as possible and help ensure that you're not accidentally ending up with a much smaller portion of the literature than what you really need to be able to understand the topic effectively. They also have a ton of workshops and training. And then I mentioned the Lions Media Center, which has a lot of spaces and software, particularly around creative pursuits. So if you're interested in doing a podcast, if you want to do a video series, all of those things are available within Lions. We've used their videography suite and been really pleased with it. Okay, Student Success Center. Some classes are still online, so there's some resources around online learning. If that comes up, there's an excellent writing center. I know their graduate writing lead, and she's exceptional. Student accessibility services. If you suspect that there may be any one of a number of challenges that you're going to face where accommodations would make a difference, we urge you to go through the student accessibility process as soon as possible in order to be sure that you're as set up as possible to be successful within your classes and not to get into a place where you're already in a bit of a hole and then trying to dig out. Okay. At Spark, we have a series of methods toolkits. So these represent the range of methods that are used within the social sciences. We have not managed to capture every single method ever used, but we have a lot of them in there. And the focus there is to link you to free online resources that are the best kinds of introductions for social scientists to those methods. So the impetus behind this was that I was working with a lot of graduate students who were Googling research methods. And what they were finding was materials that were designed largely for marketing research. And the guidance that they got from those was often counterproductive. And so I was doing a fair bit of correcting. And so the idea for these toolkits is they are designed specifically for social scientists, and they will point you to a couple of resources that are meant to get you from not knowing anything about the method to being able to read a research article about that method or begin a conversation with a research team about that method and feel some confidence that you understand the lay of the land. We have talks like the Spark Talks. They are all recorded and on YouTube. We have over 150 talks on there, and they are sorted by research type. We have a co-working space. So as I said, you can co-access this and the graduate study space in the library. To access it, you just come by LR Wilson 5803 between 9:30 and 4:30 and ring the doorbell because it's locked. Someone will let you in and get you set up. It's accessible. You can borrow equipment for research or group work and also some of the private spaces. So with the kind of equipment, we've got equipment if you need to do virtual meetings. We have equipment if you want to do a team meeting and you want like a large TV so that you can all comment on the same thing. As I said, we have the laptop that has all the research software. And then fundamentally, the reason we open the co-working space is that it's meant to be an interdisciplinary space where you have the opportunity to get to know people from a range of disciplines using a range of methods the range of different frameworks for how they think about the world. And with me seeing what research success looks like, we think it's fundamentally about being able to borrow from a wide range of perspectives and to really believe in the interdisciplinarity of the space. Research conversations. So feel free to book with me anytime. All of the research conversations are with me. You don't have to know exactly what you're doing in your research. If you have an initial idea and you want to build it into an actual plan, I can help with that. If you're stuck on ethics applications, I'm happy to help with that. So I've known a number of people who've been hesitant to set up a conversation until they knew exactly what they wanted to ask. I encourage you not to feel that pressure. Everyone at McMaster has 4 hours of free research conversations in the year, and so far no one has gone over that. So we can cover a lot in that time if that's helpful to you. We also have a qualitative suite, which includes 2 interview rooms and a focus group room, all of which have audio and video booked up. So these are very useful if you're going to be doing interviews, focus groups, even like observational studies on campus, or if you want to practice your skills and be able to see yourself on video. For those who are interested in doing facilitation or interviews long-term, being able to see yourself on video and see the reactions of the person that you are talking to is infinitely useful information. Other resources, LinkedIn Learning. So we have a free to us access room. There's a lot of different courses on there. I think they're also at the space of like, and it gets you from intro to some basic level of confidence on whatever the topic is. That's mostly my experience. Some of them go a bit deeper. There's just a huge range of what you can learn on there. Couple notes on the McMaster websites. Every once in a while, you will run into issues with certain browsers. Incognito mode will work if a site doesn't load. This is increasingly going away as an issue as we've migrated to a different platform, but it still shows up occasionally. If you have issues with your laptop, you may not be meeting the device performance standards. And if that's an issue, again, the Student Success Center can help in figuring out what to do in order to be able to have a laptop that's going to be able to manage what you need to do. If you're going to, say, do analysis with it takes a whole lot of memory, maybe you do that on a different computer in one of the computer labs or at Spark. There are a lot of options and a lot of people ready to help if you have issues with your device. General resources. Number 1, your instructors and department graduate administrator. We are fully here to help, particularly around research and methodology. Bill's library is very much there to help, particularly around literature search and software issues. University Technology Services is when you can't access something. Student Success Center and Student Accessibility Services. Anytime you are running into issues that are hindering your success, that is usually the first place to go. They can really help you to navigate what are the quickest ways to be able to turn something around, and then as needed, work with instructors, work with supervisors to make sure that you can be successful in your program. Okay. So that is my resources section. And we're, a little over halfway. I will do my best with getting through this content. Okay. My number 1 message for you in terms of balancing your life is that choices free us from drift. We won't have time to do this exercise, but I encourage you to do this as it's sort of the start of everything that I'm going to present here. And it's to identify the core aspects of your life that you devote time to, and you can think of them as accounts that you invest in, or aspects that you currently don't devote a lot of time to, but you really want to. And you just label them. So a lot of this framework that I'm going to walk you through comes from an a company called Full Focus Co. And then I kind of adapted it in my own ways over time. So this is my personal set of accounts that I work with. And this is the one from fullfocus.co. Everyone's looks different. So every 3 months, I find at least 3 hours distraction free to reflect, look at my accounts, and prioritize them. I then use my priorities to set goals for the coming 3 months. And importantly, this becomes my compass for what to say yes to day to day and what to walk away from. One of the things I often say to new graduate students is you will have infinitely more opportunities than you are able to give your best to. And so it becomes really important to have criteria and an understanding of why you're going to say yes to some things and no to others in order not to get overwhelmed. Generally, the way I do this in terms of prioritizing is first to think about what I want to have accomplished at the end of my life, thinking about the current state of each of my accounts. Where am I in deficit? Where am I doing really well without having to put in extra time and effort? What am I motivated by right now? Which accounts could do a lot better if I just put a little bit of effort into them? And which accounts can I invest less in and do more on autopilot and not have it seriously affect how it's going? In order to reflect on what I really want long term, I do a process called pseudo eulogies around my funeral. Not everyone wants to do that. I think there are a lot of ways to be able to get into what it is that you most want. The current status of my accounts, I mostly just do this qualitatively on what I think. If you want to go to fullfocus.co, they have a little quiz that gives you a cute little thing like this that is their take on where you are on their set of accounts. I never fully agree with their questions and how they structure it, but I still find it useful and I do it once a year. Okay. Priority orders are really personal and they can change rapidly and they don't reflect what you care about. So this was mine from January to March of this year. You notice I have vocation last. That's not because I don't care about my work. I care deeply about my work. But I recognize that I didn't have to put a lot of extra energy into it. I was able to kind of do it on autopilot and devote the time that I'm already devoting to it. I didn't have to have goals and I didn't have to push around it. And other things were really taking priority that I needed to put more of my energy into. And then it totally shifted for July to September. I still had physical well-being and mental and emotional well-being at the top. Those have stayed at my top forever. But then work jumped to number 3 because we were preparing for a lot happening this year and other things then kind of reordered down below. Then I build what are called smarter goals. You're probably familiar with SMART goals. They have added to very important sections to get smarter, that they're evaluated, that you're going back to your goals and making sure that they're still relevant and that you revise them. So this is an actual annual goal of mine for this year. Well, there's 2 pair. And then in this term, I figured out what the commitments that I want to make this term are relative to that. The more specific you can be in your goals, the more likely you are to achieve them. I really like to mix up what are called habit goals. So that might be something like, I think my first one was, get 20 plus minutes of writing into my schedule every week. With achievement goals, like do an in-person ICPSR session. Ensure that your goals are directly linked to what you most want. So some of my life accounts that are down at the low end of the priority list, I may not have any goals related to them because it's just not that important at the time. And then I ID the first few action steps, trusting that from there I'll be able to adjust. I don't find it helpful to sort of map out every step I need to take to be able to get to my goal. I find it limits my creativity, but again, people are different. That might give you some comfort. I do like to kind of picture the general path to my goal in order to figure out if it stresses me out or excites me. Fundamentally, I believe that life and even busy periods of life, like graduate school are really about the journey. And so I want to be sure that I'm setting myself up not to be stressed out about having goals, but to be excited about working towards things. I then look at my goals for the year and the term and I edit. This is for me. For me, the right numbers are on average are no more than 12 annual goals and no more than 5 that I'm focusing on each term. Any more and I forget day to day or get overwhelmed. There have been times in my life when a ton of energy needed to go into one goal. Graduate school is a good example. So at those points, maybe I only have 3 or 4 other goals and high importance accounts within my life, and everything else just gets run on autopilot. In evaluating my progress each term, and then at the end of the year, I consider all of what happened and how I did in context. I think a lot of people give up on developing goals because it's just an experience of continuously failing. And so it feels easier not to set goals. What I've learned in my own life, and again, results may vary, is that if I can come into the consideration of what I've done in any given term, and some terms I have blown my mind with how much I've accomplished, and other terms I haven't gotten to anything on my list, and I feel, I sort of look at it and I'm like, I didn't do that, I didn't do that. The most important thing for me has been to look at it in context and to really understand what I was capable of, what I achieved, and what does that mean for what I want to do next term. This is basically setting up your own learning agenda around how you want to run your life. And the reason I think it's so important to do this in graduate school, I didn't learn this until much later, and I really wish I had learned it in graduate school, is that this is a very stressful time. And if you can begin to build this clarity around what you're trying to do with your life and what you are caring about and interested in, the more likely you are to be able to move rapidly for the rest of your life into places and experiences that actually continue to push you, allow you to learn, and help you to keep some balance. So, for example, last year in 2023, I achieved 7.5. I gave myself half credit for 1 out of my 12 goals. Given everything that happened in 2023, I was thrilled. 7.5 out of 12 was excellent news. Okay. Then at the end of this sort of 3-hour process, I do 2 things. I use something called a time block. This is just in Excel where I match the colors of what I am doing to my different goals. Then I schedule out the next 3 months and really important things that I want to make sure that I put on the calendar so that they don't just get swept away. Similarly, I build in my Outlook calendar. You can build multiple calendars. I build a calendar that is just what I call my ideal day, and I build it every day for the week. That sets up what I would like to do every day. I have a highly variable schedule. So I would say, less than 1 day in 20 looks exactly like my ideal. But because I know my ideal and I come back to it regularly, my schedule, to the extent it's possible, gets more and more like my ideal. Okay. I'm going to pause a minute because that was a lot of content. See if there are any comments or questions on that. And then I've got sort of 16 strategies around time management. Feel free to interrupt or put it in chat if anything comes up. We should also hopefully have a little bit of time at the end for questions. Okay. The first thing I want to say is that we're seeing a change in understanding of work-life balance. Back in the day, I think a lot of how it was described, particularly for women, was basically a tightrope walking. That there was sort of a perfect state of work-life balance, and I was always off. I was always too far on one end or the other, and it stressed me out. So in the framework that I've presented, the reason it has really worked for me, and it's really worked for some of the people that I have trained in this, is that it allows me to see it as a series of overlapping and occasionally conflicting priorities that require me to make and stand by choices. While I'm saying this section is about time management, really it's about being clear on your choices. Okay. So the first tool, being realistic about time. When I first calculated how much actual time I had to do work, I was shocked. So here I am at most 4 hours in the week that I did this that I could devote to non-meeting work priorities on Thursday of that week. I needed to process my emails, so it took me 45 minutes to process those, and then I needed a break after. So if nothing unexpected comes up, I can put in 3 hours on my priorities. As I said, some weeks during the school year, I have just 2 to 3 hours total for the week to devote to my work priorities. Other things I know about myself, I always underestimate how long things will take. Some of you probably relate to that. To work with that, I break larger tasks up into smaller tasks that I can better estimate. Then I add an hour or two to my estimate for those tasks, because I would always rather overestimate and have free time that I can use for other priorities than underestimate. This is our project management system that we use in Asana. You can also just use an Excel spreadsheet or whatever works for you in terms of having like a task list. Okay. So working through my theoretical Thursday, and it's not theoretical, this was a real Thursday, and the 3 hours that I had to put in. How do I figure out what it is that I want to put my time into in those 3 hours? Well, one thing is that I have an urgent deadline that just emerged, something not yet on this list that's due on Friday. So I'm going to devote all of Wednesday, but I'm not in meetings to it. But odds are good I won't be totally done. So let's reserve 2 of the 3 available hours to this urgent task that just showed up. That gives me an hour left for priorities that are on my actual to-do list. And you can see I built a section of my list where I estimate how long things are going to take. Tool 2, this is the Eisenhower matrix, and it's a very simple four-grid system from U.S. President Eisenhower around how urgent and important things are. I build the Eisenhower matrix directly into my task tracking, and it has become a really useful way for me to sort out what are the priorities of others, what are my highest priorities, and how do I balance those. Tool 3, this is something that particularly you're going to probably be doing a lot of teamwork, and a lot of people do not like stopping at the end of a project and talking about what went wrong and how you can do it better. But I find that even just 5 minutes of that conversation makes a huge difference and helps you learn more about how you work, how you can work with others. That is one of the most important lifelong skills, and you'll have lots of experience in graduate school at getting better at it, largely through experiences of frustration sometimes. So efforts to continuously build the efficiency and productivity of our work both reduce the number of unimportant tasks and reduce the number of tasks that are urgent and derail our plan. It's not at all possible to reduce all urgent needs. A lot of things come from the outside, and there's no choice but just to scrap your major priorities for a while and deal with something that someone else. But we humans are also known to create our own crises. In my 20s, I had a problem with procrastination. I created a lot of my own crises. So the goal is to reduce the number and the severity. How do we deal with urgent needs that push other priorities aside? So tool 4 is to flex when you need to and can do that without harm. So sometimes you have both deadlines for major long-standing projects, like a graduate research paper, and new urgent tasks. I suggest this order of operations for determining what to do. Is the urgent task terribly urgent, or is someone just telling you it's urgent? How urgent is it really to you? 2, is the important task easy to flex? Has it been languishing? So say you've been doing a literature review for your graduate paper, and you've been making steady progress, but you haven't done anything for weeks, and then suddenly an urgent situation comes up. You may need, for your own well-being and comfort, to do some of your literature review before you get to the urgent situation, if that's an option. Again, one comes before that, in order that you can put aside some of the worry about this ongoing task and be able to actually focus on the thing that is more urgent. Are there other uses of your time you can get rid of or put off in order to do both? And can you adjust your time across days or weeks to accommodate multiple priorities without damaging you? Oh, yes. I use Asana for time management. Tool 5, pay close attention to how much you swing between high and low busyness. 3 12-hour days and then 2 days off is not the equivalent of 5 days at a little over 7 hours a day. Sometimes you need a big push, and 3 and 2 is what appears to be needed. But I would really encourage people to make that your last choice. Many creative people really like deep work, and they highly gravitate to what I call high swing schedules. I'm like this. I love the feeling of getting buried in a project. The problem with that is that other people are not swing workers. They are what I call default steady workers. So swing workers often have to do a lot more to avoid causing stress of those around them with their on-offness. So a couple of suggestions: check your impulses, be transparent about what you're doing and what you're not and why. Break up projects into smaller pieces that limit your ability to get buried so you can practice doing more slow and steady. If you really need to get things to get sort of in a deeply stuck place and do something for 12 hours nonstop, I hear you. Schedule that. So I use summers and Fridays of every week as times to get stuck into things, because that helps me feel creative and alive. You can swing more on things that you fully own. Try to avoid swinging on group work. It will stress other people out. Steady workers, a lot of the advice here is around practicing being able to go into deeper cycles of work in times that are high stress or where other people need more of your effort. Kind of stretch your own ability, and then what you can to really understand that there are swinging creative people and that they can add a lot to a team, even as they may be frustrated if they're not communicating what they're doing or when it's going to happen, or it ends up last minute. Tool 7, things will fill time that you give them, but some things will not happen. Most things will not happen effectively unless you have real rest and the ability to do the things that nourish your mind and body. So the question is, what are some of the ways that you approach resting your mind? And can you scale them to longer or shorter periods? Tool 8, so focus on building the minimum viable product as fast as possible in order that there's something that the people that you are working with, either formally or informally, can give you feedback on. The steadier you work, the more opportunities you have for checking in on bigger projects and adjusting as you go. And then use others. You are fundamentally stuck in your own perspective on the world. And so it is incredibly helpful to have other people weighing in order that you can adapt and iterate your project as fast as possible. Okay. This is another big one that changed my life. Not everything deserves 100% effort. So if, like me, you're a perfectionist, I actually add in what percentage effort I think any given task requires. So back to my example, today's build, I have an urgent deadline that just emerged, something not yet on this list, due Friday, and blah, blah, blah. So how do I choose to fill this hour that I have remaining? Well, part of it depends on when that hour is. So I want to put low energy effort into low energy slots. So I'm going to put my processing email at the end of the afternoon after 2 big meetings, because it doesn't take a lot of my attention. Whereas this sort of big urgent priority that just showed up, I'm going to slot in first thing in the morning where I have more bandwidth. And then I intentionally build in breaks. So I try to do a formal end to the workday where I stop a bit early, slow down, close things out, think through the day, plan out the next day. Even if you're just doing sort of, you don't probably have formal work days, but even if you're just doing sort of study periods, it's incredibly helpful to have just a small exit. And then I have contingencies. Don't waste time being unproductive. If you are not making progress on something, try to figure out why, and then take a break or do something else. You'll come back to it. You have to put time into managing your time, but it really, really pays off. So the key piece of advice, keep all your responsibilities in one place. Keep things you're actively working on away from things that are on hold for now. Keep things you'll get to later from priorities for today. I set 3 priorities for every day and don't go beyond that. Separate urgent things from crowding out important things. That's what we've been talking about that balance. Separate others' priorities from taking precedence over yours, and prioritize yourself being balanced and happy. So for that goal, my goals were enjoy a meditation session and write this proposal. When the deadline doesn't really matter, just change it. This was a really hard thing for a lot of people on my team, many of them graduate students. They would sort of leave all the dates in red or overdue. They would leave due dates that had expired rather than changing the due date to work with their current context. And it just caused them to ignore the projects. And so change the date. And finally, if there's competition between high priority items, just schedule them and then communicate with other people. People fundamentally understand that you're balancing priorities. The number one problem that comes up in groups and with supervisors is people not